Hello, Noble Knitter. It's Nancy Queen, and today I'm going to show you how to knit this gorgeous Felici cowl. It's double the thickness and it's worked in the round, and you're just going to love it. It's an easy knit, and I can't wait to show it to you. So let's get started. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click the bell to get notified every time I post. So this cowl uses Felici yarn. In fact, this is it. They have all new colors for fall. The colors are gorgeous. This one is called Countess, and it's all different shades of purple. So if you're a purple lover, this is for you. And then they also came out, that's the, it's a 100-gram ball of Felici worsted, and that's what I used for this. I used 2 skeins of Felici worsted, and it also comes in a fingering weight. So here's Countess in fingering weight, and then some other colors, but they have a whole bounty of colors. Click the link in the description below and you'll be able to see all of the colors of Countess in worsted, and I'll put a link for the Felici in worsted, and I'll put a link for Felici in fingering for you as well. But this cowl is really simple to knit, and like I said, it's double the thickness. So if you're going out and it's cold, this is really going to keep you nice and warm. And let's get into the how-tos right now. For this project, you're going to need 2 skeins of Knit Picks Felici yarn in worsted weight, a size US 8 16-inch circular needle, a stitch marker, a finishing needle, and a pair of scissors. I also want to let you know that there is a free PDF printable pattern of this project. You can find it in the link up here or in the description below. To begin our cowl, we're going to use the long tail cast on. So you'll start with a strand of about 36 inches, and you'll make a slip knot at that point. Then you'll place the slip knot on the needle and tighten it up. Now you're going to use the tail that's attached to the yarn in the back and the long tail we just created in the front. Your index finger on your right hand will secure the slip stitch, and then your thumb and finger on your left hand will be used to create the stitches. So we come up from the thumb, over the finger and tighten, up from the thumb, over the finger and tighten. And just keep repeating that. We're going to put 60 stitches on the needle, and that includes the slip stitch. Now, if you'd like a slower version of this long tail cast on, you can click this link above. Once you have 60 stitches on the needle, trim the long tail to about 4 to 6 inches. Then you're going to slide the stitches around the needle, making sure that ridge is face up. It may take a minute or two to get them worked around so that they're nice and even. Now you don't want this. You don't want any twists. You want that nice even ridge straight up the whole time. So what's different with knitting in the round is you want the first stitch that you cast on to be on the left and the last stitch you cast on to be on the right. Then we're going to place a stitch marker on the right needle because that's already been worked. Now we're going to pick up that first stitch we cast on and we're going to knit that stitch and then slide it to the other needle, and we're just going to keep knitting as we normally would, and you're just going to go around and around. Now you're going to have to work these first stitches, just slide them every few minutes around the needle, but it won't always be this way. It's just this first round has to get slid every couple of stitches. Now when you've knitted all 60 stitches, you are going to be right back at your stitch marker. So here we are. We're at the stitch marker, and I always tighten that strand. Sometimes it loosens up. So you're going to take your stitch marker and you're going to slip it from one needle to the other. Now you may notice there was a little space there in between that first and last stitch. Just ignore that strand. It's going to go away as you continue knitting. So this is how you're going to knit, and you're just going to keep knitting around and around and around. Halfway through your project, you are going to run out of yarn. So make sure you have about 4 to 6 inches, and then we're going to add the new skein. So I'm going to find the end of the yarn, and then you can match it up. Now, it just happened that my purples lined up. I ended with purple and I'm going to start with purple, but you are welcome to move into the skein and find the color that you want. So what I do is I tie a square knot left over right and then right over left and get it down as close to the knitting as possible. And I tighten that square knot up. Now I'm going to knit a few rows and then I'm going to weave in those yarn ends and untie the knot. But this is my favorite way to join a yarn because it doesn't add any bulk. You could knit with both the old yarn and the new yarn together for a few stitches, but I find that makes a little bulky spot in the knitting and I don't like it. So this is what I do, and you're just going to start knitting again. There's our square knot. And you can't see it, but you don't want to leave it like that. And I'll show you in just a moment how to finish that. So I've knitted a few rounds, and now you can see my square knot is down a little bit. So I'm working on the inside part right now. You can see the reverse stockinette showing, or the purl side. And now with my finishing needle, I'm going to take out that knot. You'll notice that after I untie this, that there's actually a hole in the knitting. See, there it is, and you don't want that. So what you want to do is you want to cross these two tails, and then you're going to weave them in on the sides that I just placed them on, now that they're crisscrossed. Then you won't see the hole. So I'm just going to thread this strand and weave it in. And I kind of find the hills and the valleys, and I go down and I find a valley. Let me just show you what I mean by that. And I follow it along, and then I come up and I follow a hill. It's just a curve going up or down. And then I go back into the hole that I came out of, and I just keep going back and forth this way to weave in the yarn end, and it gives a beautiful finish that's not visible on the other side. And then see, you can see no sign of that woven in end. Then I trim it, leaving a little tiny bit of a tail, maybe a 1/4 inch, so that I have enough to unfurl. Just like that, I kind of fuzz it up, and then it won't pop through to the other side. And then I do the same thing with the other tail. I knitted my tube until it was 34 inches long, but you will have enough yarn with the two skeins that you could knit to about 40 inches if you'd like. So now we're ready to bind off. You want to get to the stitch marker, and when you get to it, you can remove it from the needle. Then knit 2 stitches, and then you're going to take the first stitch up and over and off the needle, leaving that second stitch on. Then knit another stitch and take the first one up and over. You're just going to keep repeating this process until you've removed all of the stitches from your knitting and you've bound off all of your stitches. You'll have 1 stitch left. So you can see the space here that we're creating as we take the stitches off the needle. It's important to remember to go at the same tension as the rest of your knitting. You don't want to be too tight and you don't want to be too loose. You want it nice and even. So a lot of people try to really tighten up on bind offs, but you don't want to do that. Just maintain the same tension you've had all along. Okay, we've bound off and we are down to the last stitch. So what we're going to do in this case, we are going to leave a very long tail. We're going to leave about 36 to 40 inch tail. And then I'm going to cut that from the yarn. Then I'm going to pull that, I'm going to thread it with my finishing needle and then thread it through that last stitch. You can remove your knitting needle and then tighten that up. Now you're ready to join your ends to create your cowl. But before you do, go and weave in the yarn ends from the cast on edge. Now with that threaded long tail, you're going to go into the first 2 stitches that create a V. You're going to go under those bars. And then you're going to go over to the other side and you're going to pick up the first 2 V's, or stitches that create the V, like this. And then you're going to thread those. And tighten them up a little bit. You want to see a little bit of the stitch because you're actually creating a stitch, and then where you came out of on the last stitch is where you're going to go into on the next stitch and pick up 2. Now I'm going to go into where I came out of, pick up 2 V's, or 2 bars I should say. Don't work in the actual bind off. You want to work in the first stitch after the bind off. And you'll see right here I'm creating a knit stitch by working back and forth. I thought it might be easier for you to see if I turn my work. So you can see I'm going to the top and picking up 2 bars, and then I'm going to the bottom and picking up 2 bars. And doing this is creating another stitch in the middle. Now, as you can see here, I've gotten halfway across my seaming, and this is the exact same seaming you would do if you were joining shoulders on a sweater. It's this type of seam. And here's how it looks on the inside. There is a little bit of bulk on the inside, but it's nice and clean. And then you're just going to pick up your needle and continue working along this side, going from one side to the other, picking up 2 bars. Now when you get to the last stitch, you're going to go through and create that last stitch. Pick up those last 2 bars so there's no holes. And then you're going to go through the next 2 right here. And what we're going to do is create a little loop and then go through it with our needle so it's knotted off. And then I'm going to bury that knot in my knitting and come out the other side. Now that strand is in there and I can clip it and it won't come undone. And your cowl is completed. Congratulations. I'll see you in the next video.